reason he would not be there if Mike Tomlin says, yes, give me my Andy Reid, I'm going to leave. I just don't see that happening. But crazier things have happened. I just don't see it.
Well, listen, you know him and I don't. I only know Mike Tomlin to enjoy listening to him talk on TV, but I don't know him personally, so I don't know if that's what he would want or not. The Pittsburgh Steelers, for those who don't know, are the most stable organization in the history of American professional sports. They have had 3 head coaches since 1969. By contrast, the Jets have had 3 head coaches since last October. So, I mean, it is a remarkable consistency. So I agree with what she's saying. If Tomlin, if it's his last year in Pittsburgh, it would be because he decides he wants it to be. But do you see that as a possibility?
I do. I mean, they've been calling, oddly enough, they're spoiled. They're accustomed to Mike Tomlin, overachieving Tomlin's ways to win. But the reality is he hasn't won a playoff game in, I believe, 6 seasons. So it's an opportunity now, maybe both sides to move and go in a different direction, a fresh start. Sometimes that message gets old and stale. Sometimes you just need to inject some new ideas into the stadium. We've seen it happen with Bill Cowher, who's there like 18 years, won a Super Bowl. But it's been a long time since Mike Tomlin has won the ultimate prize. And we talk about the standard being the standard. In Pittsburgh, 6 Lombardi trophies is the standard.
What do you think, Rob?
That's it. The standard is the standard. I think Tomlin understands that. Abides by that as well. If they go into this season without a playoff win, I think Mike Tomlin is like, yeah, it's time to go our separate ways because he's too good of a coach to be in position to get their franchise quarterback. They're always going to be picking from 15 on, and that's just tough. It's not impossible, but it's tough to find a good quarterback in that position.
And it's the conversation that you have, like when Kevin Garnett, you got to go to him and say, you can help us best by moving on. We can get a first-round, second-round draft pick for you, and you can go on and you can start your career, and we can restart off based off of you.
See, I'm not disagreeing. What the guys are saying makes logical sense. But within Pittsburgh, within that building, Ben Roethlisberger literally held them captive by saying, like, I don't know, and they could have, that front office could have said, hey, Ben, this is it, we're done, and move on. That's not typically how they move. That's the reason why I think if Mike Tomlin wanted to have that conversation with the organization, I would have thought maybe before this past season, maybe before then. I just don't understand why this is the year, because Aaron Rodgers plays 1 year. I think it really is just about what Mike Tomlin wants. And they have a ton of draft picks.
And the draft is in Pittsburgh next year. So it'll be interesting to see. They've got all those picks. Maybe they package them, move up, move around. We'll find out. I got one more shock for you. I think this is an interesting one. Kmart, would you be shocked if Joe Burrow's Bengals miss the playoffs for a 3rd consecutive year?
As a staunch Joe Burrow fan, I would be shocked if they did not make the playoffs. I would be shocked if they missed the playoffs again. Let me just say that. Because Joe Burrow carried that team on his back with no defense. They did not play. Imagine if he had a decent, competent defense on the field. We're looking at a team that could have made the playoffs. I understand Trey Hendrickson. I get it.
21 touchdowns and 3 picks in their losses last year.
Yes, but this is the thing. History seems to be repeating itself, because I can remember another great quarterback there named Carson Palmer, and I remember don't do that
to my boy.
That's my guy.
But go on,
Carson Palmer, and they did this before, and they're repeating history. I feel like I'm watching Groundhog Day, because I watched Carson Palmer get money. I watched him pay T.J. Houshmandzadeh. Chris Henry was a young star. And then they also went out and paid Ocho, and they avoided, or they didn't pay attention to the defense. And you have to understand that defense in football is played on 2 sides. And when you don't do that, I can see maybe Joe Burrow, if 2 seasons, asking his way out.
Well, that would be something else. Hawk, I want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
We talk about the great quarterbacks in the league right now, right? And Burrow is right there with the other guys, and he deserves to be. It's Mahomes, and we know about him.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, I mean, anything short of a Super Bowl would be considered a failure for them this season, right? They need to get to the Super Bowl. One of those guys, both of them, need to get there. What would constitute a successful season for Burrow and the Bengals, in your opinion?
MVP season. I think it's an MVP season from Joe Burrow because kind of what you talked about. Like, yeah, Carson Palmer had a lot of the pieces, but with Joe Burrow, the Bengals did things they don't typically do. They didn't want to pay T. Higgins. That was to keep Joe Burrow happy because of the Carson Palmer situation, them trying to learn from the past and say, hey, we're going to keep him happy. With that, there becomes more expectation on Joe Burrow and honestly a lot of pressure to say, okay, this better work because we kept your 2 guys in place like you wanted to see.
He could have been the MVP last year.
Yes.
That's true.
If he didn't play as well as he played, that team would have been 2-15.
Yes.
But your margin for error is short when you depend on so many players. Every year, we watch the other receivers pull a hamstring. You know, he pulls a hamstring or something
Lamar?
like that. No, Higgins.
Oh.
Right, he misses time. So now they're so star dependent, they let guys like Jesse Bates go. You talk about Trey Henderson right there. Hubbard retired. So now if you look, it's other good players in that division. So if you can't win, as a team, you're going to lose and die as an individual.
What do you think, Kmart? For those who don't know, Kmart covers the AFC North for us.
Got a
practically like a
Midwest.
beast. So what do you think? What are your expectations from Cincinnati?
I think what Hawk just said about how Joe Burrow said, sign my guys. I think the pressure is on Joe Burrow. I think each and every year, last year he understood, I'm getting no help from the other side of the room. It has to be on me. And I think he's entering this season understanding the same thing. If you're going to make a case, we got to keep both of them, then I think Joe Burrow enters this year thinking Super Bowl, clearly.
Be careful when you let players start playing general manager because it usually goes the wrong way. Now, Lamar Jackson just went out
player,
and
I'm very disappointed.
I would ask
in
what more
Bartholomew.
he could do. I mean, what more can he do than he did
But think about
last
if
year?
the defense just plays decent.
And that's the biggest.
You need players. You need money to do that.
The difference between an MVP season and not is the defense playing well because it turns into more wins for Joe Burrow. Now, look, some of those numbers were ridiculous. They were playing from behind, though,
Yes.
because their defense was so bad. But for Joe Burrow, if the defense has even a little step forward, it should put them in position. But the expectation is that Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow take it to another level.
Off to a great start. Don't sign your first-round draft pick and you got to just gruntle start.
Yeah.
Good. We off to a good start.
But if they did not sign Jamar or T, why couldn't they sign both of them?
It feels messy, right? It feels messy in Cincinnati. Burrow played so well, he had them.
Mẹ ơi, bây giờ mình sẽ tiếp tục làm phần thân xuống nha. Ai biết giờ con nó đỡ cậu.